Good morning. Welcome to worship with the community of Westside Unitarian Universalist Church, where compassion leads us to work for justice and equality. My name is Michael Munoz, and I am today's worship associate. I want to thank our technology helpers today, especially Nikki Kennedy, Janelle Weaver, and of course, Dr. Yuki Kumamoto, for our wonderful pianist. Westside is a community of many beliefs, genders, and sexualities, a community of diverse cultural and racial and class backgrounds, a community of varied abilities and gifts. Some here to find inspiration in the great books, others in the great outdoors, and others still in great conversation. Whoever you are, whoever you may be, we welcome you to bring your whole self into this community. If you are so moved, you can try out our chat feature on Zoom by typing in some words of welcome to both members and visitors who join us this morning. On behalf of this church community, I also say to all, welcome. Today's order of service is a PDF. A link is provided via email and will also be posted in the chat for you down below. Most important is simply the opportunity to be present and connect together as Westside community. So do not worry if you do not have the order of service. We won't leave you behind. We're streaming live to you this morning, so please bear with us. There are brief pauses as we transition between parts of the service. It may help you to imagine that the next person is walking up to the pulpit. As always, please continue to watch your email inbox, the church website, and our Facebook page for updates on church programs and opportunities. You can also stick around after the service ends today if you would like to join us virtually coffee hour today. Please make yourself comfortable wherever you are this morning and continue to do so throughout the service. Now let us worship together as we listen to this morning's prelude. Our opening words were written by Paul H. Binkmel. There are some heights to which we have not risen and never will. There are some depths to which we have not fallen and never will. We pray. Somewhere between there are places where we can reach up and reach out for strength we need for our journey. This is such a place. Thus we pause for refreshment. Thus we worship in thanksgiving. Feel free to join in lighting of our own chalice, if you have one, as I share these words by Douglas John Travers. In a world filled with darkness of ignorance, let us bring the light of reason. In a world filled with darkness of despair, we may share the light of hope. In a world filled with darkness of hate, let us shine the light of love. Our chalice song is Gathered Here. Lyrics are projected. I invite you to join me in reciting the affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. Our opening hymn is 346, Come Sing a Song With Me. Lyrics will be displayed.
Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. I know your heart, and I bring you home when home is hard to find. And I bring a song of love and words in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. I know your heart, and I'll bring you home when home is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and words in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. And I know your heart, and I'll bring you home when home is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and words in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. And I know your heart, and I'll bring you home when home is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and words in the winter time.
Our time for all ages today is presented by Nikki Kennedy.
Today. You know, I've been thinking about this year, and 2020, it's been one weird year. One that's been full of unique opportunities and circumstances, and a year that I've really taken time to think about who I am and where I am and why I'm here. And as I've been thinking about who I am and how I got to be where I am today, I made a list. I made a list that included people and opportunities that helped contribute to where I am today. On that list were people that I didn't necessarily know very well, some that even existed before I was born, some that paved a way for me to be where I am today. And of course, one of the things that I value the most is my education. It wasn't just from the classroom, it wasn't just from my parents, it wasn't just from my community of faith, it was from everything and everyone around me. Sure, I'm glad that I know that 2 + 2 is 4, but I learned so much from other people, including them challenging me to think for myself, not to regurgitate information, but to learn how to think, to learn what I value, to learn what matters most. And that it's not just about me, it's about my community. It's about a community for all people to feel safe and appreciated and loved. Of course, I think of Westside and the 25 years that Westside has been Westside. And I think of all those people that played such big roles in helping Westside become what it is today. Some of you have heard of the word legacy. Maybe some of you haven't. A legacy is simply something that came from someone before you. And let's talk a little bit about those that helped create the legacy here at Westside. I want to talk to you today about one person in particular that helped create what Westside is today. His name was Dick Trice, and some Westsiders knew him very well, and some of us only know Dick through the stories and the legacy that he created and left here at Westside. As I've learned more about Dick, there's 3 things that I've learned for sure. He cared for all people. He very much believed in lifelong learning, and he wanted to ensure a place existed for progressive-minded folk to be in community. He called people by name, he cared who they were, and he even donated his personal library to Westside. And look, here we are today living out that legacy. We're still a community. So when I think about the legacy that you guys are all helping to create today, I can't help but smile. Yes, we are a different church, and we're certainly a different church than we were on March 12th, because on March 13th, the board decided not to close, but to go virtual. I'm so glad the church hasn't stopped. Yes, I am sad that we aren't all together and that we aren't in the building. And it's okay to be sad, but we are all still a community. We're all still a community of progressive thinkers who have a very special community of faith to be a part of. So as we continue to be a community that hasn't changed our values, even though we're virtual. So I ask you, how will you help create Westside's legacy? How are you connecting this week and every week? And how are you going to ensure the legacy of Westside continues?
Thank you, Nikki. Now I will share joys and concerns that were submitted via email. However, this week I did not receive any or the new web form on the care and support page of our church website. You can also post them in the comments right now if you have joy or concern you would like to share with everyone today, and those who will watch the recording later. I have a joy that the kids will start class this coming week via Zoom or whatever platform they have this coming week. We'll see how that comes, since they've been out of school for a while, and they've also had a long summer through since spring break. Good luck for the school and the classroom. Thank you, teachers.
I have a joy from Amy Stubbs. I have a new hot water heater. Hopefully no more problems. Yay, Amy. From Myrtle, we are happy to have Dick Trice's daughter Jennifer and his granddaughter Rachel. What a joy to have them with us. Yay. From Jennifer Long, we are very excited to be here in Fort Worth with all of you. Jen and Frida, well, thank you. We're glad to have you guys here too. Can't wait to meet y'all. Any other joys or concerns? Okay, well, that might be it.
Thank you. We may come back to it. We may come visit it, but for now, thank you very much, everyone.
We have Brenda Baldwin here too. Wow, that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Hey, Brenda. Nice to see you. Thanks for sharing, Myrtle.
Thank you for sharing with us. Sharing draws our community closer together. Please know that our pastoral care associates are available to support you with deep listening and when needed. Through our InReach Fund or short-term financial support of members in need. We are here for you. This morning's centering song is Spirit of Life. Thanks again, All Souls. We have a few more that came in.
Okay, from Dina Tooley. She and Greg celebrated 33 years of marriage yesterday. Congrats. And also another joy. They had a virtual wedding ceremony for her daughter, Dr. Paige Tooley. Congratulations. And looks like we have a couple concerns. One from Tom Woods. Says, hi, I'm looking for a neurologist. If you know someone, please email or text me. And from Tara, I have a concern. My husband has been out of work since March and is getting impatient about finding something new. We appreciate warm thoughts.
On the wings of this music, I invite you to join me in a time of centering. Each week here at Westside, we open our hearts to those in our community who know both joys and challenges, and to all suffering beings. I will begin with a brief pastoral introduction before we move into a time of silent reflection. I will ring a bell to signal the start of your own meditation, prayer, or reflection. And I will ring the bell again at the end. I invite you to close your eyes and check your alignment, your spine, as we begin our pastoral prayer. Spirit of life, Let our hearts be full of love as we share in the joys among this community. Let our hearts reach out in compassion to all who sorrow as well, offering a love of presence to those in pain. Westside has a long tradition of reaching out to the wider community in generosity. You'll find guidance in our order of service, the chat, and in the afterword about 3 different causes to support and how you can give. In addition to giving online through our donation webpage or mailing a check to the church, you can now use the Give Plus app, available through Google Play or the App Store. Thank you to all who are continuing to pay towards your pledge for the church, which is keeping our mission going in this time when spiritual community and support is also needed. We have also provided information about directly supporting community organizations like South Central Alliance of Churches. Links and details for giving options are provided in the order of service, the chat, and will be included in the afterward email blast early next week. We will hear a gift of piano music from Dr. Yuki Kumamoto while members make a gift or contribution to your pledge. Thank you for your generosity. Dick Trice was a longtime member of West Side, a beloved friend of many, and a fierce, insightful thinker. He passed away in May of 2015, but in the years before his death, he gave several great reflections at West Side. Today, West Side member Jeff Rodriguez will deliver one of Dick's reflections. This talk was delivered on January 27th, 2005. And now, here's Jeff.
Almost. Not there. Stand by, everyone. We're working on it. There I am. Good morning, everyone. It's so good to be here with you virtually, if nothing else. I guess that's pretty good. Some trivia questions for you to start off. Did you know that Hitler had a very particular way of tying his shoes? Yes, he liked to have them with little Nazis. Did you know they had a particular term for what they called Mussolini when he was sick? Yes, it was il duce. And did you know that when Mussolini and Hitler got together for their meetings, they were very particular about the route that they would travel for the meetings? They wanted to take the fastest way possible. I think I heard someone laugh. I'm not sure about that. Anyway, I met Dick Trice through the Humanist Group many years back. He and I spent time together also at Westside Unitarian Church. It was an honor to know him. One of the first projects that he and I collaborated on was he was giving a reflection, and he asked me to perform a particular song for him at that reflection. That song was Makin' Whoopee. That's right, we played Makin' Whoopee at the church. That's another story that I'll be happy to share with you at another time. I really resented Dick for two reasons. One, I was always reminded by him of how important it was to work on increasing my compassion and awareness for others in the community, the least among us, all of them, whoever they might be. And also, Dick reminded me of how unsmart I was. Anytime you wanted to feel like you were pretty knowledgeable, you could have a conversation with Dick, and you would find out pretty quickly just how much more reading you had to do. Which is another way of saying that I greatly appreciated having him for a friend. It was an honor, and he taught me a lot of things without ever trying to teach. And I think that's a real virtue and a real credit to the person that Dick was. As mentioned, the reflection I'm giving today, Dick prepared in 2005, and that's really important to keep in mind as I go through this. This is not a reflection, it's an introduction for a talk, so it's a little short because he intentionally wanted to leave time for conversation, which I will try to do as well. I tried to be pretty true to Dick's comments here. There's a few editorial liberties taken. My apologies to Jennifer and Rachel for the intrusion on that. Thank you so much for your patience with it. So with that said, I'm going to jump in here, put my little script into position, and start with Dick's reflection here. Most of us, especially we who are old enough to have lived during World War II, are very familiar with the fascism of Italy and its slight variation, Nazism of Germany. I was familiar with it, but had not thought about it until the last couple of years. It was the 2000 election and the very undemocratic appointment of our president that I began to think about the different systems of government and became concerned about our own. The thought of fascism and its possibilities came to mind, but at first I rejected the idea. How could anything that absurd happen here? But the invasion of Iraq and the many other illegal actions of the administration have overcome my resistance and fear of being thought of as a wild-eyed extremist. So that's when I first looked in the Encyclopedia Britannica for the definition of fascism. I was a little alarmed at how closely our government's actions were beginning to fit the description of fascism. We are, of course, far from the totalitarian rule of countries that have experienced fascism. Far from it. For one thing, if we were truly in a fascist country, we couldn't sit here today and even discuss the possibilities of such a rule. But I do think that what is happening in the US today is seriously threatening our democracy. Sufficiently serious for thinking people to question, to study, and to debate the direction which we are headed, and whether by knowing more about the systems of government, we can better understand and anticipate the consequences. It is times like these that you realize how valuable, how very valuable it is to know a little about history. And I don't mean the history that we get in high school and in the majority of textbooks on the market. I mean real history. It is especially important to understand what's going on now, for instance, and that the US has never been the apotheosis of the moral government we have been taught. And speaking of history, I also learned in my research that the Romanov family of ancient Russia had a preferred coffee shop, which I was not aware of. Yeah, they preferred to go to Starbucks. I am certainly not an expert in this area, able to educate and truly inform you, but if I can spur enough interest and relate some of what little I have learned, perhaps we can get a professor or fine student of government to come and provide a better understanding of it for us. I'll start off with several definitions of fascism that I have found, give a brief history of it, and then open up for discussion that I hope will enlarge all of our minds on this subject. The encyclopedia starts off like this. Fascism comprises a political attitude and a mass movement that tended to dominate political life in Central, Southern, and Eastern Central Europe between 1919 and 1944. Common to all fascist movements was an emphasis on the nation, race or state, as the center and regulatory of all history and life, and on the indisputable authority of the leader behind whom the people were expected to form an unbreakable unity. Fascism extolled the supreme sovereignty of the nation as an absolute. It demanded the revival of the spirit of the Greek city-state, or the polis, above all of Sparta, with its discipline and total devotion to duty, and of the complete coordination of all intellectual and political thought and activities against modern individualism and scientific skepticism. The Italian slogan was, quote, to believe, to obey, to combat. And that was fascism's antithesis to the quote of liberty, equality, and fraternity, and the prophetic as well as the prophetic and Christian messages of peace. The combination of an unquestioning faith and of a virile combativeness was to transform the nation into a permanently mobilized armed force to conquer, maintain, and expand power. Speaking of coffee, Mussolini also apparently had a favorite coffee. His preferred brand was Espresso. It goes on to read, in the beginning, fascism was not a doctrine and had no clearly elaborated program. It was a technique for gaining and retaining power by violence, and with astonishing flexibility, it subordinated all questions of program to this one aim. From the beginning, it was dominated by a definite attitude that exalted the fighting spirit, military discipline, ruthlessness, and action, and rejected all ethical motives as weakening the resoluteness of will. Stressing the irrational, the instinctual, and activism, fascism insisted that the strong will always prevail over the weak, the more resolute over the irresolute. Ultimately, everything depended upon the decisions of the leader, decisions to be blindly obeyed and immediately executed. Fascism returned to an authoritarian order based upon the subordination of the individual and the inequality of caste and rank. I'll let that sink in for just a moment. There was a great deal more, of course, Dick said, but I want to read just a few selected parts. Quote, from the beginning, Hitler served the fascist movement by his understanding of the potential of the spoken word, and the psychology of the masses. Hitler wrote that all propaganda must behold its intellectual level at the capacity of the least intelligent of those at whom it is directed, and that its truth is less important than its success. To keep your interest and to keep an open discussion going as soon as possible, I'm going to skip a great deal of the commentary and drawn out explanations of all the components that go into fascism and define it further for you in simpler terms. I have read the defining characteristics of fascism from 6 or 7 books and from the internet. And Dick provided the 6 or 7 books that he read, by the way. There is not a unanimity of definition. It certainly belongs to the categories of dictatorship and totalitarianism, but there are many examples of governments that fit this description. Only fascism seems to have all of the characteristics, the following characteristics, which many other dictatorships do not have. Here are the 20 characteristics of fascism as defined and identified by Dick. Number 1, distrust of reason, ridicule of science, the arts, and intellectuals. Number 2, denial of basic human and civil rights. Number 3, a code of behavior based on lies and violence. Number 4, government by an elite group, authoritarian reliance on a leader, not constitutionally responsible to the electorate. Number 5, a cult of personality built around a charismatic leader. Number 6, control of the media and extensive use of propaganda with an intent to brainwash. Number 7, control of dissent by threat of imprisonment or worse. Number 8, fraudulent elections, if they are held at all. Number 9, brace yourself, opposition to international law and order. Number 10, a permanent war economy. Number 11, nationalism, super patriotism. Number 12, aggressive militarism and glorifying war as good for the nation and for the individual spirit. Number 13, corporations in league with or controlled by the state. Number 14, use of homosexuals, abortion, liberals, communists, terrorists, Jews, and others as scapegoats. Number 15, obsession with national security. Number 16, obsession with crime and punishment. Number 17, dehumanization of the enemy. Number 18, demagogic use of religion or myth. Number 19, suppression of labor. And number 20, corruption throughout. As you can see, these are bare headings. Much can be added to each one to further describe all the ramifications of each. One of the lessons of fascism is that it has a strong, irrational, but emotional pull that works even in a purportedly civilized life. Don't forget, Germany was among the most developed of European nations, and yet it was able to descend into a barbarism that is almost unimaginable. In the last 20 years, it seems to me the extent to which the public mind can be controlled through demagoguery and media monopoly is incredible. Gore Vidal put his finger on it. We are the least educated nation now, and we know less about what's going on in our own country than people who are outside of it. What Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister under Hitler, said during his time is true now and in this country as it was then in Germany. Goebbels said, quote, it would not be possible to prove with sufficient, no, I'm sorry, it would not be impossible to prove with sufficient repetition and psychological understanding of the people concerned that a square is in fact a circle. These are mere words, and words can be molded until they clothe the ideas in complete disguise. But now let's cover a little history to learn about fascism. It first appeared by name in Italy in 1922, although the reality of it began in France at the beginning of the 19th century. It was followed by Germany in 1933, Spain in 1936. Japan became fascist in the 30s, and in our own hemisphere in Argentina, Juan Perón established it in revolt in 1943. The rise of fascism after World War I was without much doubt due to the great upheaval, the destruction, and the crises resulting from that horrible and inexcusable war, and the fear of possible democracy and socialism which might have arisen from it. The idea one gets from reading several accounts of the birth of fascism is that the leaders more than ever became fearful that the masses might be swayed to internationalism and greater equality, thinking that their superior station in life would be challenged. This fear roused the aristocracy to work ever harder to crush incipient democracy. I was reminded during the preparation of this reflection of Jefferson's comment that laws were made in the first place primarily for the protection of the poor. The rich, Jefferson said, would always be able to take care of themselves. Howard Zinn, in his book, People's History of the U.S., and in many other histories, we should have learned from them that the struggle has been between the powerful and the powerless from the beginning of governments. Fascism was another strategy of that eternal war, but it was the one with the least restraint, least concern for life, and an obsession not only for greed, but for unprecedented power. Fascism really began in France, but not by name. The leader of the anti-liberal, anti-individualistic, and authoritarian movement was Charles Morass. He repudiated the disunity and verbosity of parliamentarism. That's a mouthful from Dick, not surprisingly. He admired the Roman Catholic Church, not for its Christianity, but because it glorified universalism, social unrest, and pacifism, and instead for the virtues of hierarchy, discipline, and traditionalist order. He and others created a militarized and fascistic government, and it was he whose influence had so dishonored France by unjustly and criminally sentencing Albert Dreyfus to Devil's Island for a crime he did not commit. In true Dick fashion, he dropped in the name Alfred Dreyfus, Devil's Island. You'll want to look those up. They're worth taking note of. Most historians recognize the birthplace of fascism as Italy. Certainly it was Mussolini that gave it its name, and it is interesting to note that Mussolini, before he came to power, was a dedicated socialist, internationalist, and revolutionary. He was even sentenced to 5 years in prison for his violent opposition to Italy's invasion of Libya in 1911 and for his activism in socialism. But his overriding need for action, his obsession with power, and a growing desire to make Italy in his own image changed his direction and philosophy toward Nietzsche and Machiavelli. By 1922, he had seized control of the government in Rome, and he claimed that fascism had, quote, since 1912, become not merely an Italian phenomenon, but a world phenomenon. To achieve his ends, Mussolini demanded the transformation of Italy into a nationalist, militarist government. In 1935, he invaded Ethiopia. In 1936, he met for the first time with Hitler, and in 1938, he intervened in Spain to support the right-wing groups, which were called the National Front, in their effort to overthrow the elected government of the Popular Front. Spain had held an election in February 1936, and the Popular Front had won that vote, but by July, the right wing, which was made up of landowners, the Catholic Church, and the military, started the Spanish Civil War to overthrow the popularly elected government. A year or two later, Mussolini and Hitler swung into power in the battle, and the democratic government of Spain soon fell to the fascists. It's interesting to note that the Spanish Civil War drew international volunteers from all over Europe and 2,800 men from the United States. One U.S. group was called the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, and they fought several heroic battles. However, the U.S., the French, and the British governments adopted a policy of non-intervention, including an embargo on a shipment of arms, which, considering that Germany, Italy, and Portugal, which was also a fascist state, were supplying arms and several divisions of troops for the Spanish nationalists, inevitably brought about the defeat of the populists. Interestingly, one of the volunteers from England was a future author named George Orwell. And Ernest Hemingway, who wrote the classic For Whom the Bell Tolls, which was a classic novel about the war, also was a supporter of the populists. I really have no idea how much younger people know about Germany during Hitler's rise and fall, but all I will say here is this. His rise began after World War I in 1918, and his famous two-volume Mein Kampf was written in 1924 and 26, and he came to total power in 1934. He's got a note here in the side that says Hitler also had a favorite video game. Apparently that was called Minecraft. Any of you as old as I am know a great deal about him, and during our discussion, more will probably be said about him and his malignant fascism, so extreme that it called for its own stronger name, Nazism. And now we wrap things up. The encyclopedia and most other books list more countries as having had fascist governments, although a couple disagree about the finer points in the definition of the word and insist they were not fascist in every respect. I agree with the majority that includes these countries, which include Portugal, Norway under Quisling, Belgium under Leon de Grelle, Japan from its invasion of China to its defeat by the US, and Argentina under Juan Perón. Other governments such as Iran during the time of our CIA overthrew the democratically elected government and installed the Shah. Peru, while Fujimori was in power, Greece under the current colonials, and Turkey under Ataturk. It just works you are so hard here. Now you know I feel so ignorant. And maybe a few more have been called fascist, but there's probably more agreement that there were dictatorships not completely fitting the definition of a fascist. So these two guys are sitting in a hotel bar having a drink, and the one starts talking, and he says, I'm really concerned about all the corruption south of the border. It's just totally out of control. The corruption, the violence, the drugs, the chaos. It's just very concerning to me. The second guy says, yeah, me too. Where are you from anyway? And the first guy says, Canada. The vast majority of Americans would be aghast at the idea of fascism taking hold in this country, of course, even the remotest possibility. But the German and the Italian people probably felt the same way before it gradually gained supremacy in their country. So the question seems to be, is it possible here? Could it happen under quite different circumstances than those of Italy, Germany, and others? If not, what are the circumstances that might prevent its occurrence? And that's the conclusion of Dick's talk, except that he provided the 7 books that he read prior to preparing his talk. And he also provided the information. These are going to look a little funny on the screen. He read this article, Free Inquiry, Fascism, Anyone, That was written in 2003. This appeared, that's a secular humanist magazine many of you guys will recognize. And this tells you a lot about where Dick pulled his information from. That author, Lawrence Britt, defined 14 characteristics of fascism. Let's see how well this projects on the screen, because this will help drive home what Dick was trying to say. Let's see if I can get that over there. Powerful and continuing nationalism, disdain for the recognition of human rights, enemies and scapegoats to unify your cause, supremacy of the military, rampant sexism, controlled mass media, let me see if I can get that over there, obsession with national security, religion and government intertwined, corporate power protected, suppression of labor, disdain for intellectuals and the arts, obsession with crime and punishment, rampant cronyism and corruption, fraudulent elections. The joke has been that you can always tell when it's been a really good UU service because everybody leaves either angry or depressed. I don't always agree with that, and I don't want to leave you angry or depressed. So I want to give you a couple of thoughts before we part that can perhaps carry you into the discussion groups as you think about the current environment which we're in today. I know it's very difficult for a lot of people, and there may be some who feel very discouraged. I understand that. So I want to give you a couple of thoughts about others who have shared some difficult challenges. Try and hold this up just a little bit. When I despair, I remember that all through history, the way of truth and love has always won. There have been tyrants and murderers, and for a time they seem invincible, but in the end they always fall. Think of it. They always fall. I never doubted that equal rights was the right direction. Most reforms, most problems are complicated. But to me, there is nothing complicated about ordinary equality. And that picture there that you can't really see is Alice Hall. They hate because they fear, and they fear because they feel that their deepest feelings of their lives are being assaulted and outraged. And they do not know why. They are powerless pawns in a blind play of social forces. That's author Richard Wright. Just a couple more. The bullied straight kid goes home to a shoulder to cry on and support, and can talk freely about his experience at school and why he's being bullied. I couldn't go home and open up to my parents. See if you can figure out that is, and what his sexual, who that was, and his sexual orientation. Someone can put it in the chat. And just two more. Not a philosopher, but one of my favorite ones to part with. If you have enough time, everywhere is within walking distance. I hope Dick's comments have given you some things to think about. I hope I have done justice by them. Thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful morning. Please be safe.
Thank you, Jeff. We love you. And thank you, Dick Trice, for your wonderful time here. I invite you to join me in singing our closing hymn, We Sing Now Together.
We sing now together, our song of thanksgiving. We join
Our closing words from Andrea Hawkins Camper. May we see all as it is, and may it all be as we see it. May we be the ones to make it as it should be. If not us, who? If not now, when? This is answering the cry of justice with the work of peace. This is redeeming the pain of history with the grace of wisdom. This is the work we are called to do, and this is the call we answer now. To be the barrier and the bridge, to be the living embodiment of our principles, to be about the work of building the beloved community, to be a people of intention and a people of conscience. You are invited to extinguish your own chalice as we reach the end of this service. Please join in the congregational closing. Let us go in peace, believe in peace, and create peace in our lives and in the world. May it be so. If you'd like to participate in our virtual coffee hour, please stay on the call and you will be placed into breakout room with several other people. Please be mindful of our congregational covenant, welcome newcomers, and give everyone an equal chance to participate in conversation. Coffee hour will end about 11:40.
Stay for coffee or leave?
Thanks, everyone. Hold on a second. We'll get you split up into groups for chat.
He said, stay for coffee or leave, like he's talking to someone. I don't know who it was.
Oh, okay.
Should we join?
Hello, Cadence.
I saw you on the
Nice job, guys.
Okay. Am I?
Hey, Ginger, it says you haven't accepted the breakout room request.
Okay, let me find out how to do that. Join breakout room.
Hey, David, I just tried to put you in another breakout room. If you want to join one, you can accept it.